I heard this said a number of places, and I just reread it recently. We're like an old photograph, an old bad photograph. We are overexposed and underdeveloped. And that in part says a lot about the type of rest that we might be seeking or not getting. And so write this down. When we talk about the choice of rest, we need to avoid being overexposed and underdeveloped, like that poor photograph. We don't want to be overexposed in that, okay, I'm doing this and I'm doing that, but meanwhile, I'm underdeveloped. I'm underdeveloped where? In my faith. I'm not developing my faith. God's will is for you and I to develop our faith. We might think we're like this city here. We're virtually invincible. That's not true. We need rest. And we got to be careful that we're not overexposed. And that's how we are. You know, we're overexposed at work. We're overexposed with this. We're overexposed with that. And meanwhile, what suffers is our underdeveloped faith. Now, notice this. Being overexposed leads to fatigue and frustration. You will feel fatigued and you will get frustrated when you are overexposed. Now, what's God's answer when those two things are in play? What's God's answer? What's God's best? Well, God's best is rest, by the way. You may recall in Matthew chapter 14, verse 12, something monumental happened. John the Baptist was horrifically murdered. He was beheaded. Now, that deeply grieved the disciples and Jesus. Of course, that's Jesus' cousin. And in Matthew 14:12, it says that the disciples took the body of John the Baptist and buried it, and then they went and reported to Jesus. Now, Mark's gospel picks up on that, and you'll notice these verses right here in your notes. It says this in Mark chapter 6, verses 30 to 32. It says, the apostles gathered together with Jesus. They reported to him all that they had done and taught, and he said to them, come away by yourselves to a secluded place and what? And what? And rest. This news, this grieving news that John the Baptist was murdered was much too much for anybody to handle. And God's prescription, as Jesus gave it, was for them to rest. Verse 32 says, they went away in the boat to a secluded place by themselves. They went to rest. We need to rest. Now, why do we need to rest? Flipping over your notes, because we want to avoid what's called the deadly D's of fatigue. The deadly D's of fatigue are doubt. When you are not resting in God, when you're not developing your faith by going to church, by reading the scriptures, by praying, you will be given over to the deadly D's of fatigue and doubt without a question. You're going to start doubting God. Does God really love me? Some people, you go as far as going, does he really exist? You'll hear a lot of people, they'll challenge the things of God, and they could be a picture of health, they could have it all together, but they don't realize it. They got soul fatigue. Their soul is completely fatigued, and they don't even realize it. And they're doubting, and the reason of their doubt is that their soul is sleep deprived. It's rest deprived in the Lord. Another deadly D is discouragement. How many of you ever remember the Cowardly Lion? Remember him from The Wizard of Oz? Here was this incredible, imposing animal. Well, even after he found courage, he's still skipping around, so I don't know how tough he looked after that, but here's this opposing animal that had no courage. You know, that's what discouragement means. It means to be disfused of your courage. And when we are fatigued, when we're not resting in the Lord, when we are overexposed and underdeveloped in our faith, well, guess what? When we go through situations right in our own home, they're normally discouraging. Now just multiply that by 10. That's how discouraging they are. Because we're fatigued. Our soul is fatigued. Defeat, we're going to feel defeated before we even step into a situation. And despair. You probably could throw depression in there as well. That is why you need to make the choice of rest, both physically and spiritually. Now, rest might be looked upon as, that's weak. You're going to rest. Why are you going to do that? I'm reminded of a story that I heard and shared with you a couple of years back. And it goes a little something like this. There was a man who challenged another to an all-day wood chopping contest. The challenger worked very hard, stopping only for a very brief lunch break. The other man took a leisurely lunch and took several other breaks throughout the day. At the end of the day, the challenger was surprised as well as annoyed to find out that the other fellow had chopped substantially more wood than he did. And he yelled out to him, he says, "I don't get it. Every time I checked on you, you were taking a rest, yet you chopped more wood than I did." And the man said, "But didn't you notice," said the winning woodsman, "that when I was resting, I was sharpening my axe?" That's how you and I have to think of rest, that we're sharpening our axe. When we go to church, we're sharpening our axe. When we're praying, we're sharpening our axe. Just like God allows physical sleep to help your body recuperate and recharge, spiritual rest helps you do the same. It helps you sharpen who you are.